Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to HTO. It's obviously a very special podcast. We are 48 hours away from football coming home. I mean, that's what Andrew and I clearly think anyway. However, there is the small hurdle of a final on Sunday, and we're joined by a special guest who you may recognise better from official FPL shows, FPL Diary author. You may recognise him from Fantasy Football Fest, but he's not here to do that today. He's not here in an FPL capacity. He's just here for the Azzurri, for the Blue, for Italy. Gianni, how are you? Are you well?
I'm well, mate. I'm really well. I've had the best month. It's been brilliant, hasn't it? Just football, fans in stadiums, international football as well. I'm a Chelsea fan. I love watching Serie A too. But nothing comes close to international football for me. It's always been about the Azzurri. They're the team I get really hyped about. Going into a Champions League final for Chelsea, I wasn't nervous till a few hours before kickoff. A couple of days out, I'm scared. I'm petrified. I'm getting butterflies already. I'm going to have sleepless nights. This is big, and I'm absolutely buzzing. Lot of energy, a lot of weird energy going on. But yeah, I'm apprehensive, I'm nervous, I'm scared. But at the same time, I'm confident and I'm excited. It's going to be some game.
Yeah, I think so. I can't see anything other than a ridiculously close game. Andrew, how are you? Are you excited, nervous, looking forward to it?
Yeah, a bunch of everything, really. I'd echo what Johnny's saying there. There'll be a few things we disagree on, I'm sure, in the next 20 minutes or so. But that's one thing we definitely agree on. It's been what Euros. And yeah, Southgate's got me feeling whole again. So,
well, that's how we close the pod. Maybe Andrew just singing us out, a bit of Atomic Kitten. I guess first reflections. Let's get both your thoughts on the semi-finals. Both obviously tight games, both nearly going all the way. Yours clearly did, Jenny.
Yeah, many people have said it's the weakest performance we've had. It's really difficult to say that when you're playing against a team that's so good as Spain. We didn't look as good against them as perhaps we did against, Switzerland when we scored, I think it was 3. But of course we're not going to. They're a tougher team to play against than Switzerland. So for me, we did what we needed to do. They were probably always going to dominate possession. Probably the only team in European football that will dominate the ball against Italy. We expect the way Mancini plays, and again on Sunday, we should have more than 50% possession. But against Spain, it was never going to happen. So look, we had to play a slightly different game. Rather than passing, Jorginho was making interceptions for fun. I think he made a record-breaking 8 interceptions or something. So look, we adjusted accordingly. And the best thing about this Italian team, Tom, we're clinical. I can't remember a team quite so clinical, especially one without a world-class number 9. Immobile is far from a world-class number 9, but we're not relying on him for goals. The goals are coming from all over. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 players, which I think is a first in the Euros, score 2 goals or more. Barella, Pessina, number 8s. You've got the wide forwards. Insigne's coming up with goals. Chiesa is just ice cold in front of goal. So we're not a team that needs a huge amount of chances. So against Spain, whilst we didn't dominate the ball, we put our chances away, and that's something they couldn't do. So yes, it went to pens, and it was 1-1, and I think that was a fair result, 1-1. And on pens, I say the same again if it happens on Sunday. Donnarumma is having a world-class keeper's key.
Yeah, I don't fancy pens against Italy. I don't fancy Jordan Pickford in a penalty shootout against Donnarumma.
No, I don't think I would. And also, when you look at the pens, Harry Kane is one of the world's best penalty takers. But I know we're all in celebratory mood. I don't want to rain on anyone's parade. England deserved to beat Denmark. Was it pen? Was it not? Whatever. But that penalty was shocking. That was a Morata penalty. Look at Jorginho's penalty in comparison. The biggest kicks of their lives. One of them bottled it. One of them smashed it. So
that'll be the Tottenham DNA. Sorry, fans listening. They will know that Andrew and I are massive Arsenal fans, but we'll put that aside. We obviously wanted him to score, but you're right, it wasn't the best spot kick. Andrew, thoughts on England semi in general? It was tight again. Again, though, as Jenny said, I think we did deserve to win. I think Denmark were finished by sort of 65 minutes, 70 minutes when they were playing for penalties a long way out, and the goal felt like it was coming, whether the penalty was pretty damn soft or not.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think that extra time was just horrible, really, to enjoy. I mean, it was interesting though, how that game was going. It seemed like an age ago that they went in front. We looked a bit all over the place. First half an hour quite chaotic with our passing from the back. Pickford didn't look as calm as he's been, and I think that goal that we got with the lovely Kane and Saka link up, that just sort of seemed to calm us down really. And from then on, we just seemed to dominate the rest of the game. I saw the Denmark sort of not collapse, because clearly it wasn't a collapse. We only struggled over the line, but they were going to tie. I mean, they looked shattered against the Czechs in was it in Baku? I think that game was maybe, and it was just incredible the heat that day. And they looked knackered at the end of that. And I thought that's how this game would go. But when we got into extra time, I just thought we've got to score here, because as soon as you go to penalties, that dominance goes out the window.
Yeah, and the same feeling of a bit like Donnarumma. I would have fancied Casper probably to get a couple. Well, clearly you saved Kane's in extra time before the rebound. No, it was a close one. You sensed it was coming though. Whether there was going to be that penalty, or if that doesn't happen, I think we just scored in the next 10, 15 minutes that we had left anyway. We were coming, going strong. Right, let's start the build up though. Contentious or not, you've posted, Jenny, a lovely combined Italy-England 11 ahead of the final. Before we go through man for man, your sort of criteria when picking this, I guess you've gone for starting 11s from the semi.
Yeah. Only starting 11s from the semi. I'd love to have Spinazzola in there, or I'd love to have, I don't know, maybe a Reece James in there for the Chelsea fans out there. But no, the two 11s that started in the semis, that was who I was picking from. That's
fair. Just to give the people a bit of the criteria there before they're like, how the hell is Jack Grealish not even starting in this 11, let alone not starting in our one? So should we walk through it? I mean, look, before we say anything else, you've only gone for 3 England. But let's see if it's fair. In goal, clearly you've gone Donnarumma.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the easiest. I don't think there's many England fans that would disagree with that. And if they are, and I say that, I've had a few disagree with the Pickford Donnarumma shout, and it's really? Like, mate, all I'm asking you to do is just watch Donnarumma, because clearly you've never done that. Like, if you've ever watched him play for Milan or ever Italy, even hopefully before the Euros, but even if you've just watched the Euros, I can't remember Pickford making too many world-class saves in this Euros. He's been very solid, don't get me wrong, and he's made a lot of good saves. How many worldie saves has he made? He's not had to, fair enough. Donnarumma's made about 5-6 worldies out of nowhere, Kasper Schmeichel style saves. So for me, Donnarumma's top 3 goalkeepers in the world. Jordan Pickford's not even top 10 in the Premier League.
I think that's a big shout to say top 3 goalkeepers in the world, but I would say he probably edges Jordan Pickford. I think if you look across, and I think part of the reason the England fans are so excited at the moment is generally we've got a squad of fairly young, talented players. I think that's a position where for the next 4, 6, 8 years, we want someone else there. We want someone to come along. Obviously, hopefully, Dean Henderson sort of nails his number 1 spot this year. And who knows what that can become. But yeah, I think probably in agreement, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think every England fan has been quite impressed with Pickford's tournament, but no, it's not an argument. I agree.
To be fair, Pickford in England shirt is at least he's doing better than he is in an Everton shirt. So we
need to just remind everyone, because you sort of forget when you watch him, he's 22 years of age, Donnarumma. It's just scary, really. Don't get me wrong, he's got the 2 Warriors gladiators coming out of the Colosseum in front of him, but I think he's definitely part of that triangle, isn't it, that they're talking about. He doesn't rely on those centre backs, that's for sure.
I think it's a good point to make in terms of his age. He's been around for so long already that I think people normally forget that, it's a cliche, but it's kind of true. Goalkeepers come into their own in their late 20s, and so to think that there's still the best ahead of him, that's, I think, the exciting bit, because there was obviously errors early in the career, but there always is with goalkeepers. Left back is one of England's only picks from yourself, Luke Shaw. I guess slightly led by injury, but also just led by a fantastic season and tournament, though, to be fair to him.
He's been brilliant. He's probably the best left back in the Premier League, certainly for the second half of last season for me. Like, he should get in any Premier League 11. And then when I look at who he's competing with for this slot, it's an easy one. Like, there's a lot of Premier League fans that would say, Emerson's rubbish just because he's second, third choice. But don't forget, the 2 in front of him are pretty useful. Emerson's a good player, in my opinion, but he's no Luke Shaw. And I know there's going to be people screaming at this because I'm going to sound so Italian biased throughout the next half an hour, but Spinazzola for me was player of the tournament. Like, he was sensational. There's very few players forget the position that I would want to put above Spinazzola. It was
an
amazing.
FPL asset as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Ridiculous asset.
And the guy can defend. He's still got the highest kilometers per hour in the Euros. Like he's rapid as well. Like he's Kyle Walker and then some, and then offers stuff going forward. But look, we're not here to talk about Spinazzola. He's injured. It is what it is. You put Emerson versus Luke Shaw. There's no contest. And Luke Shaw, fair play, because from the criticism he had under Mourinho, and I forget he's still only 25. Again, he's another one which should have his best years in front of him. So yeah, I've been impressed with Luke Shaw. He's really stepped up.
Yeah, no arguments, Tim, I presume.
No, fantastic. I mean, particularly in the last 2 games, outstanding. No, 3. You include Germany in that as well.
Yeah, and off the back of, as you said, of a really good season at United, and one of their best players. We're going to come to the centre backs, and you've gone for the pairing. It's the classic pairing, been together for years. I think this is always the challenge when you do composite 11s. Are you picking the 11 best players? Or are you saying this team's going to trot out on the pitch and play together? Because I think if it's the latter, I'd struggle to disagree with you, because you want them, they come as a pair. Gianni Bonucci, it happens. I think in the form he's in, coming back from injury, you'd struggle to say Harry Mcguire, he's colossus at the moment, absolute colossus. Yes, he can look a bit clumsy at times at United, but on his day, he's phenomenal centre-back. They paid a lot of money for him, and kind of rightly so. He's a brilliant centre-back, and he is playing out of his skin. I would be, if I had my England hat on, I'd probably want him in the back there, But like I said, if you want a pair, then I'm struggling to disagree, basically.
Yeah, do you know what? I always pick my 11s that could play together. Otherwise, you get a midfield 4s of 4 number 10s. It's come on, that's not fair on Kante or whatever, So it is a team that I think can play together, and that's definitely part of my thinking. But also, it was a team that for one day and one day only, i.e. Sunday, for that final, who do you want on your pitch for your team, right? And now, look, if you're asking me who I'd want for the next 12 months to play for my club, Maguire's first choice over both of those two. But for Sunday, with their experience, the fact they come as a couple, their leadership, their know-how, the big occasion, they've had so many of them. We're talking a lot of Champions League finals between those two. Chiellini and Bonucci are just... Schweinsteiger said the other day, he said that's still the best 2 centre-backs in the world. Now, I think that's a little bit too heavy. I don't think they are. We forget that Bonucci was actually dropped by Juve at the end of the season, and De Ligt was playing with Chiellini. And at times, Chiellini's been out of the team. But look, this Euros, they've been fantastic. This is probably their last hurrah, definitely playing together. Bonucci will continue. He's a couple of years younger, but Chiellini is probably not going to be playing for Italy beyond this. So, they come as a pair. It's harsh on Mcguire, because Mcguire has been outstanding, and he's shown that he's an international world-class player. We've seen him perform well in sort of weaker United teams than England, and before that, weaker sort of Leicester or Hull teams. Big fish, small pond. Can he step up? Absolutely. He has been the man. So it's harsh dropping him, but I can't see past Chiellini and Bonucci.
That's fair. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
I feel sorry for poor old John Stones here, to be honest, because he's not in the debate for the 2 positions. But I think he's had a very, very error-free tournament. Should we put it that way? Just for a guy who can sometimes look, he's had an unbelievable season as well. Let's face it, at City. But I'd probably go for the 2 Italian boys here, because I think you mentioned, Johnny, a minute ago, that in a final for 90 minutes. If you want 2 centre-backs, I think you'd go in the trenches with those boys, wouldn't you? But Harry Maguire looks an £80 million centre-back. And that's a price tag that he has kind of had to live with in the last couple of years. But he's justified it in this tournament. He looks like a man on a mission, Harry Maguire. But it's a hard one. But I would have to say, Chiellini and Bonucci, purely for that reason of a pair, you'd go with them.
I'm just hoping it's one game too far for them. And, late on, tired legs, you are going to get whoever it may be coming off the bench, whether it be Jack, whether it be Sancho, whoever it may be, running at them. I think something's going to happen.
But as we saw the other night, though, particularly with Chiellini, that those boys will do anything. to getting it.
It's hard when Sterling's running at that pace, though, which we'll talk about Raheem in a minute.
Chiellini, by the way, has had fitness issues. He had an injury earlier in the tournament. He missed a couple of games. Then the idea of him playing 3 games in sort of 8-9 days, which is what he's going to be on if he starts in the final. Combine that with the fact he played more than 90. Look, I think he will start, and I think they'll roll him out. You know, no player's ever 100% fit, right? But they'll roll him out at 50-60% if they have to. But at the same time, I'm slightly worried that he's not going to make it because of the game time he's had. But look, if he doesn't start or he does have to come off early, we've got good replacements. You know, Toloy's been getting minutes, but Acerbi will come in. But also, you know, Bastoni's a great player. So there are options. But yeah, I think Acerbi's going to be the one that would play. But I think Chiellini, they roll him out regardless because he's so key.
Yeah. We're going to come to right back now. Let's be honest, this is the position that on the eve of the tournament, Gareth Southgate picked 4 right backs.
Yeah.
We're embarrassment of riches, top right backs that many club sides would love to have, and you've gone for Di Lorenzo. Now we'll probably fight you to the death for this one. We're going Kyle Walker clearly, but give us your case for why you've gone for that.
Do you know, when I originally posted that team on Twitter this morning, I'm pretty sure it had Walker in. And then about half an hour later, I changed to Di Lorenzo and reposted. And the reason I originally went with Walker was it was a 50-50 call. I was 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And then I was like, I'm going to get so much backlash for only having 3 England players. Or was it 2 England players? So I was like, I'll put a third in. No, 3 England players. So I'll put a 4th in. So I put Walker in.
It was just like there you go.
Yeah, it was a real tough one because Walker's had an amazing tournament and he was really impressive last night, wasn't he? Like his recovery speed's great. He reads the game well. He's been defensively suspect at the back post. The likes of Gary Neville, who's coached him, has often said incoming crosses from the other side, backstick, as we saw against Croatia, he can be vulnerable, but he seems to have wised up to that. He's not committing too far forward. He's last man of defence often when teams are on the counter and from set pieces, and his recovery pace is insane. But Di Lorenzo is a very good player. And the only reason no England fan would like that call is because no England fans ever heard of Di Lorenzo a month ago. And that's the only reason. And it's like, he plays in a Farmers League. Yeah, fair enough. You don't watch Napoli, but Napoli are a brilliant team and score a lot of goals and play very nice Italian football. And Di Lorenzo is one of their brilliant players. He's also rapid. He's been so sound defensively. You guys will want to fight me on Walker, and that's cool. I can probably be persuaded to go Walker over Di Lorenzo, but I'm telling you guys, and for all those listeners, there's not much in it, but because he doesn't play in the Premier League, of course, Kyle Walker's way better. In fact, we've got 5 better right backs. That's not the case. There's talent in Serie A. The guy that scored that free kick last night, Damsgaard, he's an absolute baller. He plays for Sampdoria. No one's ever heard of him. He's 20 years old. There's so much talent in Serie A, but people don't see it because we're all so engulfed. And myself included, I love the Premier League, but there's other talent out there. And it's like that English tax with transfer fees. You could probably buy Di Lorenzo's 27 for 30 million. Kyle Walker's at 27 is going to cost you 50. We saw that. So, yeah, it's just one of those, isn't it? It's the English tax. But I'll give you Kyle Walker. I think I've probably been a bit strong, and he deserves his place because he's been very good, isn't he? I mean, Andrew, I think you're a fan.
Yeah, it is a lot closer than I think a lot of England fans would admit. I think there's not much in it really. I think Di Lorenzo had a very, very good, solid tournament, and a lot better going forward than people give him credit for as well. But no, I think Kyle Walker. I said before the tournament, I think he's our best right back if we were going as a 4, and also because he can play in a 3 so effectively as well. And you rightly mentioned last night. I think he was outstanding. He was a monster last night. Yeah. I think he could probably have offered a bit more going forward in this tournament. Kyle Walker, actually. I mean, Luke Shaw's done an amazing job on the other side, but Kyle Walker has all round. I think he's just done everything to a T with what we've asked him to do, really.
Yeah, and just ridiculous recovery pace as Walker as well. So if you're thinking about an 11 that's going to play together as well, he can save you. There's a couple of occasions even last night which could have developed into proper promising attacks for Denmark, but he sweeps back so quickly that he just snuffs it out.
And that pace will be needed on Sunday as well, because Italy have got very quick attacks. So I think Kyle Walker's going to come in handy.
Yeah, not off.
I think the Walker pace has been so key, and Gareth loves it so much that's why he's not bombed forward. Like, he doesn't want to overcommit him because he's often the last line of defence. Like that chance in the first 20 minutes when Denmark had, the centre backs had both stepped up because Mcguire and Stones are encouraged to do that. It meant Stones was so tucked in that he was in the centre back position, mopping up from Damsgaard, who didn't quite have the pace. But any other defender, Damsgaard wins that ball and gets a shot on goal in a really dangerous position. But he's so rapid. So fair play. I was really surprised actually that Kyle Walker wasn't number one for kilometres per hour, because he always says about he's the sort of fastest man at City, fastest man at England. But yeah, maybe it's that first 10, 15 metres, which he's really, really impressive in. And actually the top kilometres per hour is obviously judged when you're probably hitting 50 metres, which doesn't happen often on a football pitch.
He seems to be getting faster.
Yeah.
I know. Midfield three, you've gone, again, all Italian, but we're struggling to disagree with this one. I think the England boys, Rice and Phillips, have done fantastically well as a partnership. Obviously, slightly forced hand with, Henderson being out for such a long time with Liverpool and just making fitness before the tournament, just as the tournament started, really. But I think we know we're slightly short there, especially of a ball-playing centre mid at England. And you almost feel like you're playing both of Rice and Phillips there, because neither do either job. Neither do the Jorginho job and neither will do the Verratti job. And they kind of do a bit of both. And they've done, like I said, they're tearing up trees. The engine on both of them is ridiculous, but to retain possession, to control a match, I'm struggling to disagree with your three. And Barella's probably my favourite player you have. Love watching him, baller. So yeah, I'm struggling to disagree with that three. It's probably just a position again that, who knows, someone like a Jude Bellingham in 3 or 4 years, the way he's operating at the games against, again, English focus, I know, but the games against Man City in the Champions League at that level, at that age, he was probably the best player on the park for a lot of those games at 17 years old. So hopefully he could be one of those players in a couple of years' time. But yeah, your three there are pretty strong, aren't they?
I think he will be Bellingham. I think you're right. He will be. He could be a Barella. Like it's a bit different, the Italy midfield, because we line up in a three, right? We've got Jorginho as a pivot, and then you've got Verratti slightly to the left, and then who's really creative. And Pochettino at PSG has pushed him higher up the pitch, often playing in a number 10 role. We've always known Verratti deeper, but for Italy, he's doing a bit of both. And then on the opposite side, Barella, who is the one of the midfield three that will go beyond the forwards and make those midfield runs, like a sort of Frank Lampard, if you like. So it's almost like a three, one either side of Jorginho versus the two-man pivot for England, and then Mount central in the number 10 role. So if we compare Barella and Mount, because they're such similar players, although playing different roles, if we go back and look at the two pivots, then Phillips and Rice, they're very, very good players in their own right, but they're not at they're excellent players. They're top of their class in sort of Premier League and club football, but you wouldn't have them down as world class for their positions. Now, when you look at Jorginho and Verratti, there aren't too many players in the world that you would put in that same band. I think they are. Jorginho, I say this a lot, I think he's the best at what he does in terms of his position. No one plays it better. Now, loads of teams don't play with a Jorginho, but I've been blown away by him this season. Like, he's been amazing for a very long time. In Serie A at Napoli, he was the best midfielder in Italy. Since he's been the Premier, he got so much stick because he was Sarri's boy. But look, Lampard and Tuchel both loved him. And Mancini now has built his team around him too. And I think he's the only outfield player for Italy that's played every minute this Euros. The guy doesn't get a rest. He doesn't come off. I think it's probably just him and Donnarumma that have played every minute. So yeah, he's an orchestrator. He's nicknamed the radio because he's a bit like a Henderson. He will talk all game long. He's a real leader. So Verratti, Jorginho, for me, it would be nailed. And then you could argue it's a toss of a coin between Mount and Barella because they've such similar players. They love a high press.
I don't think Mount's done very well this tournament. Like you said, I think it's probably because he would be better in a midfield two with someone sitting behind than as a 10.
Yeah, he's not a 10, is he? He's far from a 10. He's an 8.
I'd personally be playing Jack Grealish in that position kind of all day. For me, my two favourite English players to watch are Jack Grealish and Phil Foden, and neither have really got minutes, not consistent minutes. And for me, one of them needs to play. I think I'm not a huge fan of Mason Mount anyway, which you won't love as a Chelsea fan. But especially in this system, I don't see it. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
I think we watched the game the other day, Spain against Italy, where you saw two players in Busquets and Jorginho that just showed us all as England fans what we desperately miss. And there aren't many of those players around, so Grant, fair enough. And I'm not going to criticise Gareth Southgate at all, because to be honest, I'm quickly realising when I do, he proves me wrong. And I like Grealish and Foden as well, but they can't start on Sunday. So, it's I think that Rice and Phillips have done incredibly well, but they don't break the lines. And we do, after this tournament, whatever happens on Sunday, I would love us to find a player in there that can do that. And it's about having the radar. They haven't got blistering pace. They're not physically robust, but they can see passes quicker than our two. And I think what happens is they can't see the pass quick enough, so they end up going sideways most of the time. The ball is on; it's just they're not seeing it quick enough. So,
Harry Neville said it. England don't produce that sort of player. They never have, and it's really difficult.
I think Michael Carrick was probably someone that could play it, but he was in an era where you had Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard, and stuff, so it was hard. And then Barella was one of our. I'm going to sound like a proper Prem fan here, but he was one of our ones to watch before the tournament, Gianni, when we did the preview show. Nice. He's an Rolls Royce. He plays the game at his own pace, doesn't he? And the only thing I would say about Italy, what I've noticed, I don't know what you think about this, is when I've watched them play, there are so many occasions where I'm watching thinking, give him the ball, like he's on the edge of the box in space, and you see him kind of go like this, and they give it to Insigne, and I just think that they need to give him the ball more.
He's got a really good shot, as we've seen. Watching him in the warm up against Spain, he was so angry at himself every time he missed in the shooting drill. I couldn't believe. I've never seen a player beat himself up for missing in a shooting drill. And by the way, he was sticking so much in the top corner. He's been brilliant. He's been into sort of top three players of the season with the likes of Lukaku. But yeah, I was so excited for Premier League fans to watch Barella, and I'm really pleased he stepped up. He's so dynamic. He's got a bit of everything. He can tackle as well. He has been getting subbed a bit, but in a way that's because we've got the likes of Locatelli and Pessina that can come on and also get a goal. So
he seems like he tires a bit. Is that
possibly?
Is that
yeah. I think it's probably the game time as well. It's if any given weekend playing every Saturday, he's probably fine for 90, but in this tournament it's slightly different, isn't it?
Let's move forward into the sort of front three. One side, I'll just name them all and then we can discuss them. Raheem Sterling. The other side, Chiesa. How can we not? There's just, and we'll talk about that one. It's really interesting because obviously didn't actually start the tournament. People like Berardi and stuff like that, and in many ways, sort of almost a bit like England in terms of lots of options there. And that's the reality in terms of those sort of wide forward positions as options. And then, I think quite unanimous Harry Kane up front. But we'll look at those couple of special goals that Chiesa scored. I think you've got to have him there now, don't you?
He's amazing. Like Chiesa, he was so good in Florence at Fiorentina, and he got his big move to Juve, which everyone had talked about for a couple of seasons. They were eyeing him up, and he went there, and many thought he would fail because it would be too big for him, sort of playing alongside Ronaldo and stuff. He's been sensational for Juve in a team that was been pretty inconsistent under Pirlo last season. He was one of the first names on the team sheet under Mancini in this sort of new look Italy. He loves playing on the left. He's probably better on the left than he is the right, but of course that's Insigne's role, and he's not going to get in over Insigne, who is our sort of number 10. He's similar sort of player to Mancini was. He play almost as good on the right, so it's like, okay, he'll be our right forward. And then Berardi went and scored loads of goals for Sassuolo, and then had an amazing game in the warm-up to, I think it was, I don't know, I can't remember who it was. I think we played Austria in a warm-up to the Euros. And off the back of Berardi's performance in that, he got the start. He started the Euros, and we all thought it would be Chiesa. Berardi had a worldie friendly, and Mancini went with him. And fair play, it worked. And he thought, let's go with Chiesa as our first sub, our Jack Grealish, if you like, our X factor, maybe one for later in the tournament if he grows into it. And boy, has he done that. He's taken his chance. He's ice cool with his finishing, as we've seen. And as we saw with his goal against Spain, he likes being on that left-hand side, so he can do the Thierry Henry cutting on the right foot curler. But Insigne likes that finish, as we saw against Belgium as well. So look, Chiesa is two-footed. He's our pace up top because Insigne is not quick on the left-hand side. So we need a runner, and he is it. So yeah, for me, he's sort of one of the first names on the team sheet, which I know is controversial, and we're comparing him to Saka because we're going off to starting 11s. Now, is he better than a Jadon Sancho? Perhaps not, but we're not debating that. We're debating, do we prefer him to Saka? And we know Gareth has his men, and that's cool. So yeah, Chiesa I absolutely love, and I'm tipping him to have a big final. He's a little bit fresher than some of those others because he missed the first couple of games.
Yeah. I think that's a good point around the freshness. And yeah, I think that's fair. Obviously, we're huge Saka fans because we're Arsenal fans as well. And I think incredibly talented player. But nonetheless, England haven't got that nailed right attacker in the tournament. We've tried obviously different options there across the piece. Foden started, Sancho had a game, Saka's had a couple, and he's done well. But we're struggling to disagree there. And I think clearly then having Raheem on the left-hand side, who's had a phenomenal tournament, offer, let's be honest, a very difficult campaign with Man City. He's come into this, he's delivered. Also, ridiculous engine there. Like 120 minutes, he's still charging, at the Danes last night. I was really surprised about that. And he's obviously putting the ball in the net. And the reality is, you need to score goals to win games, and he's doing that again after a season where he kind of struggled to do that slightly at City. But yeah, he's turning up, man for the occasion, man for Wembley as well. Boy from Brent, as they say, growing up around the corner. I wonder if that could be a headline come Monday. And I know, Jenny, you're worried about it. I saw your 2-minute preview for clip earlier on your walk, and there's things like that do start to align when there's a team at home. When there's a team at home, and we've seen it in history across, many World Cups and European Championships, but World Cups in particular, where a home nation is just spurred on. Yes, there's a crowd, but it's also it's the same. It happens in the Olympics as well. Look at home nations in the Olympics. They suddenly get more golds than they do at any other Olympics because they just find something extra within themselves. And I do wonder if that's sort of been part of Raheem's summer. After a difficult season, finding himself again, still probably coming in at 0.5 or a million too heavy on FPL for me to make him a viable asset. But I do think it'll be interesting to see his ownership after the tournament, because I think before the tournament, everyone was like, he's not an asset now at that price.
Yeah, I mean, he was dropped. Like, he wasn't a starter for City. He started the Champions League final, yes, but before that, he missed a lot of games. Foden was getting the nod, wasn't he? So
it was Foden Morris, wasn't it? He Foden on the left, Morris on the right, who's coming in at a great £9 million for anyone who's looking at that, considering he'll probably start the first 2 or 3 games. That's another thing that will happen. Sorry, getting sidetracked in FPL chat, but that will be another thing that these players won't be there for game week 1. I'm almost sure of it now. But yeah, so Sterling's had a great tournament. You're never a huge fan, are you, of Andrew, of Raheem Sterling? But he's delivered.
Yeah, I think it's more. I'm just such a massive fan of technically gifted players, and I just think that's an area where Sterling isn't as strong. But no, I mean, he's got great qualities. He's been unbelievably effective, and without his goals, we wouldn't be where we are. I'd make a slight tweak to this team, though. While I'm thinking about it, if we're thinking of the whole tournament, I'd actually have Sterling and Insigne. Chiesa has had huge moments, granted, like 2 massive goals. So I can't. This isn't a massive gripe at all, but I'd maybe go for like Sterling on the right and Insigne on the left. But I mean, I think it's fascinating for me, this England attack, because who would have thought before the tournament, Tom, that Saka would be starting more games than someone like Foden? I mean, Saka wasn't even going to be in the final cut, you could argue. So,
but this is what I love about tournament football, because you're bang on. But the reason I love tournament football is that often your best 11 isn't your best players. I mean, even if you look at England historically, the time with Next looked pretty good, and we went, when we got to the quarters in 2002, we were playing really good stuff, and we only went out to the eventual winners in Brazil, but we were probably, the 2 best teams at the time when we met. But we had a mixed match of teams, of players then. Like people like Sinclair was in the squad, and doing well. Danny Mills. These weren't your best, they weren't your best players. Yeah, and the same thing's happening with this England team. There's no way, that many people, as you say, before the tournament would have had Saka having more minutes than Jack Grealish or Phil Foden, and yet you need balance.
We've said through the whole tournament, haven't we? That our 2 best players in terms of technically, they're not going to start on Sunday. And
I would still start one of them over Mount, but that's my.
Gareth wants players he can trust defensively, and Mourinho did this at Chelsea. He can't come into Chelsea. Second time, Mata was our starting 10, just got player of the year, and he went, no, I don't want Mata, he can't run, can't defend, I want a presser. Oscar gets it, and he made it very clear. Southgate's done that with Mount. He trusts Mount in defence. The press, the interceptions, the tackles, Mount isn't there. to get the crowd on their feet and do a Grealish or a Foden. There is no way he trusts Grealish to play in that number 10 role, who effectively becomes a third person in midfield. Grealish, when he plays, I know he didn't in the friendlies, when he plays, it's as a wide forward in tournament football, because he doesn't trust him defensively. And you could say maybe similar with Foden, and that's why Saka's playing. Similar to Mount, he can do more than just the attack. 50% of football is the defence, right? And Saka and Mount do that, and Gareth doesn't want to be adventurous. He wants to not concede and nick a goal where he can.
And at this level as well, it's bang on. It is about both sides of the game. And the higher you get up the ranks of the stages of football, it becomes even more important, doesn't it? But yeah, I just think it's fascinating how that's all panned out really with England's attack, and how we're going into a final where Foden and Grealish won't even be considered to start. Though if we think opposite, it won't. It will be Mount, and we shouldn't be surprised by the loyalty Mount being showed either, because Tuchel has Ziyech, Werner.
Do you think he throws a curveball though, and brings someone like Sancho back in on the right? Do you think he does that, or do you think he sticks with Saka?
I've got a feeling that Saka will start again.
I would love him to. Again, obviously that's a slight Arsenal bias, but I also think that, again, I believe in moments, and he's taken to it. He's got the confidence. Do you bring someone out in from the cold? It's risky.
Yeah, I don't in a final. I can't see him starting someone that's only played.
It definitely wouldn't be Sancho, would it? Like, I know Sancho got a start, but look at last night. Who did he want to bring off the bench? Grealish and Foden way before Sancho didn't. I don't think Sancho came on, did he? Did he come on? I don't think he did. No. So he doesn't trust Sancho. Against Ukraine, when it seemed like it was going to be a gimme, and it was fine. But for me, it will be Saka all day long. And look, maybe the curveball is the formation. I'm pretty set. We know he's going to play. It'll be the same team, right? But could he go to three at the back?
And I was about to say, does he go three at back again?
If he did that, the wide forwards, I think, would be Sterling and Kane, obviously playing up front. It's either going to be Saka, or maybe you play Mason Mount there, where he's played for Chelsea, because he loves Mount so much. Even less creativity when you just got Sterling and Kane. I hope he plays the back three. It will be a 5. I don't think he will. I think he goes 4-3-3 the same.
I hope he doesn't as well. I think we also need to retain the pace, and I think that has helped with Saka as well. Saka and Sterling are both. I think pace could hurt you. To finish our 11, obviously we've gone Harry Kane, someone who, let's be honest, started the tournament incredibly slowly, and I don't just mean from not getting a goal in a couple of games. He also just looked quite poor. Let's be honest. I think to the extent that a lot of England fans were calling for him to be dropped, saying, well, does he deserve the place just on reputation, name alone? Reality is he has come good, not only with goals, but performance the last couple of games been absolutely phenomenal. And I guess, look, he's the best 9 across the two squads quite comfortably, isn't he?
Yeah, he's for me. There's a top 3 number 9s in the world: Lukaku, Lewandowski, and Kane. Okay, Ronaldo's not a 9, although he plays as a 9 often. Yeah. But if you take Ronaldo out of the equation, those 3 are head.
You've always just got to take Ronaldo and Messi out of the equation. Whenever you discuss any positions, don't you? Because they're just such freaks that you say, obviously not including those 2. What about everyone else? Yeah, you're right. And again, it's still through gritted teeth as Arsenal fans, but nonetheless, getting goals and just a phenomenal poacher and finisher, and does more than that. He's obviously dropping so deep as well, but that does enable our wide forwards to get around, and it brings other people into the game. And also, people sort of criticise him sometimes for his physicality, but the reality is, he played a lot of games this year, and he's still going hard, like Sterling, in those 9 minutes. The England recovery for me will be really interesting. Do we, with that day less to get ready, do we start to blow late on? That'll be really interesting, because if you look at people like Rice, Phillips, Sterling, Kane, they've played a lot of minutes as well. And, they've put a lot of shifts in. And the way Gareth's playing, like you said, it's slightly defensive, slightly pragmatic, but nonetheless, it's all Trojans doing it. That'll be really interesting in terms of, it's been a busy week, a month of football for both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, I was praying the game yesterday would go to extra time because of that. Italy's game went to extra time. I was really hoping we'd play a team that had also had to go through that 120 minutes. England look pretty comfortable, pretty fresh still compared to Italy for me. Against Spain, Italy were flagging. When Morata scored in the 80th minute, there was only one way we were going to win that football match. I turned to my wife and I was like, if we win this, it's on pens. Like we will happily play for pens now because we look shot, even with all of our subs on. England last night, as you said earlier, Tom, like if Kane misses that pen, England was still probably going to get that goal. Like they looked really strong. And that concerns me slightly, even though the English players have got a day less rest. And also the third game of the groups, Italy had the luxury against Wales of playing a second team, right? Because we'd already qualified top. England didn't have that luxury. And we've seen a bit of rotation on the right-hand side of midfield. Sure, you know, with Saka and
it's the last 20 minutes, half an hour of Ukraine, we sort of withdrew everyone important.
Yeah.
But what's this travelling back and forth? Italy, do you think that's going to play a part coming back on Saturday? Is that losing of some of their day extra of rest?
I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I just assumed we were going to stay down in London for 3-4 days prep ahead of the final. This will now be our third trip to Wembley. We've also been to Munich. We obviously had the first 3 games in Rome, but it is a lot of travelling and it does put us at a disadvantage because you're getting on an airplane every time. Look, we're flying probably, I'm guessing, to Luton, certainly one of the London airports. So we trained in at Barnet at the Hive, so you know it's all fairly close, but it's still a 2.5 hour flight from Rome. I'm not a massive fan of that, but look, I think it probably impacts us a bit. But these players are so used to it. These are Champions League players, right, that are used to flying 4 games, and even within country, those that are based in Naples will sometimes fly to games in the north, you know. So that happens and they're used to it. But it does give England an advantage for sure. Like being on home soil with the travel time from St George's Park, what a lovely luxury to have. This is it seems like this is your moment. Like I said earlier, the stars have aligned. Like you've got the easy half of the draw. You've got the ref decisions. You've got no injuries. You've got the football's coming home. It's like you deserve to be in the final, absolutely. But
I would say the best 2 teams made it to the final. The reality is these 2 teams deserve to be in the final, and it doesn't necessarily always happen. I wonder, we're going to go for predictions shortly, but one last thought is about that crowd. Football's been without crowds for so long, it feels like forever, but for the last couple of years, with reduced crowds, I think it's just still going to be 60,000. There's talk that they might get more in, potentially. Clearly, it's going to be massively partisan, massively in favour of England. Who knows the weight that could bring?
Yeah, it's nice that I've noticed for the Denmark game, the Danish fans that were in were behind a goal still. So that makes me think the Italian fans that are there, at least they're behind a goal on the lower tier.
Them up in the corner miles away.
St James's Park or something. Yeah. The away fans up there. But so that's nice in a way. Like I think there were 6,000-7,000 Danish fans there last night. So let's say we get the 7,000. Behind a goal, we'll make a lot of noise and you've got the chance then of penalties being at your end still. Which I think is so important. Like if it comes to penalties, those coin tosses, go in first is a big advantage, and Italy won that, and then we also won the end, and that was obviously really, really nice to have that luxury, and maybe we get that chance again. But look, there'll be 7 England fans to every 1 Italians. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be a 12th man for the English. So we got to fight against that. But look, when we won the World Cup in Germany in 2006. We beat the Germans in the semi-final, I think it was in Dortmund, and the stadium was full of Germans. So I've got fairly good memories of Italy doing it in an away environment. And they're familiar with Wembley.
But that's ultimately why you've got to let us win, because you've got those good memories. We don't. We obviously, given our youthful looks, we're only 18. I wish, but we weren't alive in 1966. Let's push then. Let's go for it. I know it's difficult. It's going to be tight. But what's our score predictions? I'll come to you first, Andrew. What are you going for?
Well, just to touch on the fans a minute ago, I think we'd all agree that of all the moments of the Euros, that has to be the best thing about this Euros, ultimately, in the big picture.
The best thing, and obviously Christian Eriksen being absolutely fine. Well, I say absolutely fine, but that was horrific. And him being well, and the fans being back, and obviously football coming home. So,
I'm happy to go first with this. I think this is obviously something that's always said before big games, but I just think this game in particular on Sunday, I think the first goal is absolutely massive. If Italy score it, I can see them mastering the game and frustrating, and us not being able to sort of have the nous to sort of overcome that. So I can see penalty shootout. I don't even want to think about penalty shootout, to be honest, right now. But I think it could easily go to penalties. Having said that, the Euros has been full of drama and goals, and it could end up being a 3-2 thriller. But I'm actually going to go for a 0-0 penalty shootout.
I don't think I can handle a penalty shootout. They're just horrible. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm with you though, Andy. I think our teams could cancel each other out. It's not like they're the same. Like I do think it's the English steel versus the Italian finesse in many ways. Like England look like Italy. England are the most Italian-looking team I've ever seen.
I've heard that a couple of times, and I don't think you're wrong yet.
And we're scoring. We're looking good.
Let's have a bit of fun here then. Who's the most Italian-looking English player?
Harry Mcguire is Italian, surely. I mean, the Yorkshire Italian. I know Phillips has been dubbed the Yorkshire Pirlo, but Mcguire just loves defending and loves sticking his head at everything. Chiellini's got 3 broken noses from a football pitch. He does the same. Yeah. But yeah, I think it could be a 1-1 draw. I think there won't be many goals, and a 0-0 wouldn't surprise me either. But 1-1 would, I mean, Italy could score early and England, I think, could chase the game but come up with a goal eventually, because especially the England bench, like the England subs Southgate can call on. Now, will he call on them? Because we know he's sometimes a bit late on those creative subs because he doesn't like subbing Sterling. He won't do that. He won't sub Kane. Only gives you one attacker to sub. Italy will happily replace the whole front 3 if they have to, and the midfield. We replaced the front 5 the other night. It was only Jorginho from the attacking 6, the midfield and forwards that stayed on. But I think 1-1. And then I think in extra time, it will be England that look like the most likely to win, but they won't overcommit because it's Gareth. And we could see a shootout. And if it goes to a shootout, not who's ever confident on a shoot. No one can say they're confident going into a shootout. But if I look at it sensibly, I should fancy it with Donnarumma, and also the fact that our players have just scored penalties in the game before. Like, they should be confident. And Harry Kane, he'll be thinking, where am I putting this ball? Because I just fumbled it the other night.
I'm actually seeing the game pretty similarly. I think it's going to be quite, again, it could go either way. I think it's 4 of the last 5 European Championships have been just decided by a single goal, either 2-1 or 1-0 only. Apart from, as you said earlier, Spain's sort of dominant win against yourselves. Yeah. Apart from that, even since 1996, I think it's been 2-1 or 1-0 only has been the other scores. So I think it's going to be tight again. I do quite like the shout of maybe England going behind, but then crowd and energy late on, a 1-1 at 90 minutes. And then for me, it's about and I still think then we'd dominate extra time based on that fresh legs, based on the energy, based on the crowd, based on all that gives you. Yeah. And it's all about whether we could get that winner. So I'm playing it out, and I think I'll go for 2-1 after extra time, England. But it could, I like you guys both. It could easily go all the way, and I'm just hoping not. So, thank you very much for joining us, Annie. I hope it's a fantastic game on Sunday. I hope, obviously, you're not going to be too pleased with the outcome, and we'll have our moment for once, and then we can go back to being not very competitive.
To be fair, that was a fairly clean chat. We did well there, boys.
Yeah, we didn't argue too much. It depends if we did the pod again on Monday about all the decisions that went against either side. That could be very different. Stay, everyone listening, I hope you absolutely love the final as well. Stay tuning in at HTO Football, all the channels, all the platforms as ever, and we will speak to you all soon.
It's coming home, boys.
It's coming home.
It's coming Rome.
Yeah.